going over progress. How do you kind of manage or define progress with a situation like that?
So just in general, like, so progress is the next step. And so I have it that it's tiered into 3 different categories. So there's the physical progress that we're capturing. There's the behavioral progress, and then there's the social progress. And so also kind of stepping back to like progress, so anyone can create a program. Right now, Dave could write me a program to up my bench press, or, I'm working with a child and I have a plan for the child, but it's how you execute it. So this is where like the art, that's the art that comes into play. Because if you're not progressing, then what's the point? Right. Anybody can follow something, but are you actually making gains? Are you reaching what you need to reach at the end of the day? So physical progression, this is where we get into one way to look at it would be, say, our sets and our reps. Are we having the actual overload, or the skill acquisition, or whatever it is that we're trying to physically better? How is that just each session or over a month? How is that slowly ticking into some type of progress that is getting them closer to whatever the goal is at the end? So at this point, just maybe there's a progression of you're meeting a child, say, weekly, just once a week for 30 minutes. Or I've had students or clients that would be like 15-minute session to 30 minutes, and then maybe to 60 minutes. And maybe you're only meeting once a week, but now you're going to meet twice a week. So there's a progression there. And there's nothing that's right or wrong, but these are just ways, just think of your own training. How do you progress? It could be, for the longest time, I've had clients that they would do one exercise and they didn't want to do the standard, like multiple sets. They would do one set and they're on to the next thing. So how are you going to increase volume when like if you do one exercise, you have to go on to the next one? Or how about the child that they would rather just do the same thing every single time you see them? So they met you day one, you laid out the schedule, and now they think this is what we do every time and we're not going away from this. So how can you slowly progress that to eventually, say, weight on the bar? So the poundage, that's another progression. Physical and behavioral kind of overlap in a sense, but like physical could be too, like tactile wise, like a child doesn't want to use the prowler or some type of tool that, say, has so much sensory overload. So how can you progress? Or maybe has a misconception of this particular, like a band would inflict pain upon me, or I don't like how it smells, or I know that I tried to do it with one particular exercise, I failed, so I'm never touching a band again. So you're navigating through all those, just the mental aspect of how can we progress and kind of get rid of some of these misconceptions, depending upon the child. And for some children, they don't have anything prior to cling on, but those that, maybe their prior experience is like gym class. And so they surely don't want to jump rope because they were bullied and told, that they're not strong enough, or another trainer, basically didn't listen to them when they needed something, or they just wanted to rest. And so now every single trainer is bad, so just that physical progression is, again, not just one thing, but how can you measure something physically that is showing advancement or progress? Trying to see. Another thing that I mentioned with this particular section, like before you actually get to the physical behavior and the social progressions, but also kind of discussing Anat Baniel and her approach with neuroplasticity and whatnot. But so she has a book, Kids Beyond Limits, and I reference that a lot throughout the book, and like handouts that I've given to like schools or studios that are working with children, where just saying, hey, you also want to read this book because it's just great. And it's just going to, everything that you're going to do, it's going to accommodate that much better. But I use what she has suggested as like the active ingredients within the cement. So think we had our bricks, we have those components that we know we need to hit. We have the cement. That's what's going to get us from one brick to another. And then the active ingredient within that cement is, say, those neuroplasticity type of elements that are just going to further enrich what you're trying to accomplish. So, those are other things that you can progress. So for example, one of the things her book is something that I would read. Like I would read a section of her book and then I would try to implement it. So that's what I suggest, is that like just with this book too, that you read something and then you're like, oh, well, if I just try that, I'm going to try that today, not try to do everything in one day. But like slow, for example, would be like, if you can imagine the child that's bustling through the door, super lean, muscular, and when I say bouncing and climbing up the walls, like literally. And so just how can I slow this child down, because he can't communicate. He's going from crying to talking to you to smiling to sobbing. And you can just see his system like going haywire. So how can I slow the child down to bring him to like something where he's actually functional? That could be an example of like this active ingredient that you're going to progress. How long does it take you to slow the child down, say this particular session, and then the next session, how can I progress this so that maybe we get to that slow quicker, which is, doesn't make sense. But, so that's something that kind of leads this section off, are those active ingredients. And it's something it's just continuously throughout even the storybook. Like once you realize what those active ingredients are, you're like, oh, okay, like I need to incorporate that as well. So the physicality and then the behavioral, that's like a lot of the emotion that kind of brings us back to that regulatory component as well. But like the messaging system, like I said before, where you have the child has trust, that they feel that there's a messaging system going on, so that if they feel a certain way, then they know that you're receptive towards it. Having something in place, again, what works at home, what works in the school. Does it work? Great. Then I'm going to incorporate that within this system, and we're going to somehow progress that. But if there are other systems that are outside of the fitness realm and they're not working, well, just don't repeat what other people are doing. Create your own thing. And then back to that physicality, like I said before, like those fears, those phobias, if that is part of it, and it may not be for every child, but like, how can you progress through those so those are no longer an issue?